Now we will hear from Lindsey Sherman, who is an architect, project architect at the design practice Urban Think Tank. And she is also a lecturer at the Chair of Architecture and Urban Design in the ETH Zurich Department of Architecture. And she will be talking with us today about the syncretic city.
Okay, hello. So as you know, over the course of this weekend, I'll actually be giving 2 lectures, one today and one on Sunday. And I'd actually like to treat these 2 lectures as one comprehensive discussion, allowing the ideas that I discussed today to continue over to the working session that we have on Sunday. So today I'd like to begin by discussing our approach to design, our approach to cities, and our approach to informality. Then I'm going to illustrate these concepts through our metro cable project. And then on Sunday, I'm going to pretty much pick up where the metro cable leaves off and discuss our project Centro de Acção Social per Música in Sao Paulo, and then the Torah Daveed research that we've done in Caracas. So these 3 projects each represent a different stage of our process, and collectively they frame our idea of the syncretic city. So just to start, we're very excited to be here taking part in this Learning from Cairo workshop. And this is exactly how we work. We learn from the existing city and translate this knowledge into new possible futures and design thinking, modes outside conventional models. For example, as you see on the screen, La Vega, it's one of our test cities that we work in Caracas. So to begin, we know that the contemporary city has undergone unprecedented urbanization in recent history. This has resulted in the continued expansion of the urban territory. We see higher populations and an increased density. Today, the city faces many challenges, and this is the global city. There are failing mobility systems, unequal distribution of resources, lack of accessibility. We see a degradation of environmental states, unequal distribution of wealth, and we also see an acute asymmetry in social, political, and economic engagements. And in many cities, we find this rapid expansion resulting in informal settlements. And these settlements actually account for some of the highest urban growth rates. And these communities challenge the capacities, the resources, and the resilience of the urban footprint. So knowing these struggles, the struggles of the urban environment, we must ask ourselves as architects and as urban designers, what do we do with this information? How does this inform our process of design? What do we do with the simple fact that over half the world's population lives in cities? Or that informal settlements form entire secondary cities within cities, like this city here in Caracas. These are areas that are conventionally neglected, physically, politically, economically, and socially. What do we do knowing that 600 cities will produce 60% of the global GDP? And how do we respond to the fact that urban migration will result in 20 more Mumbais within the next 30 years? The challenge is what we do with this knowledge. And in our work, we try to translate it into productive potentials of the city. We try to transform it into new design thinkings. And it is important that we critically think about these questions, because traditional methods of architecture, urban design, and planning do not work in these areas. They're unable to respond to these challenges. So in order to sustain incremental and effective growth, we need to understand and envision new urban futures. Excuse me. Therefore, it is necessary to engage cities and these informal areas as opportunities, not as problems to be erased. Latent within these communities, there exist potentials that can be tapped into, but first we have to shift our view. On the screen, you see a map of the informal settlements that we find in Caracas, and these are areas that are typically seen as negative moments within the city. But these neighborhoods actually have a very rich dynamism. These are areas that typically work outside of the conventional framework of the city, but this is exactly their potential. So in order to see new opportunities, we must understand these urban challenges not as negative symptoms of a growing city, but we must understand them as the city itself. So because these areas don't follow these conventional growth patterns, we actually need to frame a new kind of mindset in which to read, evaluate, and act within them. We need to change how we perceive the city. Therefore, this is not a mountain full of houses. It could be seen as a house the size of a mountain, rich with its own dynamic organization. So in order to frame, So it's our goal to frame a new mindset concerning design, concerning program, concerning typology, technology, land tenure, and project implementation, in order to create alternative strategies, strategies that respond to the radical asymmetries that we see in the contemporary city. And these asymmetries are quickly becoming the rule. They're no longer the exception. Therefore, it is necessary that we expand the fundamental role of the designer into an animator of change. Here, in this photo of Caracas, we see that there are actually two cities. Simply put, one is formal and the other is informal. But this physical separation only represents a more complex relationship. These spaces already have an interchange, but it is highly problematic. For this reason, we see this as a zone of experimentation. Formal and informal areas are equally vital. One is not simply a negative result of the other. They're pretty much two sides of the same coin of urbanization. We don't aim to privilege one side over the other. We don't want to erase informal settlements and accommodate the continuing urbanization of the city. But at the same time, we don't want to romanticize the informal and fully reject the formal. Instead, we need to generate an active interface between bottom-up initiatives and top-down planning. And in this space between, we're able to create a unique platform for the integration of formal and informal, where top-down can meet bottom-up. And this is precisely the territory where the formal and the informal can serve as a new point of contact for architecture in the city. Critical territory here is not only perceived as physical space, but is also the territory of critical thinking. And this is precisely the territory where formal and informal can meet and can serve as a new point of contact for architects. We need to use this interface to build a new framework. We don't just need to read and evaluate the city, we need to act in the city. And we need to do this with both socially and ecologically sustainable solutions. So each can learn from the other. It's not an evolution from exclusion to inclusion, like we heard earlier, but it's an evolution from exclusion to collaboration. And this is our starting point for design. This is a syncretic city. And we define the syncretic city as one that allows oppositional ideas to coexist without a homogenizing or an equalizing effect. In other words, the syncretic city is a productive coexistence of different forces where a new city can be built in, on, and with the old. So today I'm going to discuss our metro cable project. And as I mentioned in the intro on Sunday, I'm going to discuss the Centro de Acção Social per Música and Torah Daveed. And these three projects frame our idea of the syncretic city. And it illustrates how this productive coexistence of the informal and the formal can begin to work. So the metro cable is located in San Agustin, which is a neighborhood in Caracas, Venezuela. And this cable car system ties into the existing public transportation. But it doesn't only provide access to the inhabitants that live in this very difficult terrain, it also acts as a framework with which we insert new program and social infrastructure. And we call this integrated infrastructure. In San Agustin, it sits on a hill that rises 100 meters to its ridge, and it has steep slopes that go down towards the city. However, despite its central location within the city of Caracas, it has extreme social and physical barriers that leave it completely disconnected from the city. As you can see from the image, the highways and the rivers to the north clearly mark this separation. But the real disconnect actually lies in the topography. The river is easily able to be bridged, but many homes are built on high-risk areas with steep slopes that provide very little access. And these barriers are manifest in the daily life of the barrio. And this is a great image because it clearly illustrates these issues. Here, it's not just about pedestrian access and the difficulty of personal mobility. It's about not being able to transport goods, construction materials, or household items. A lot of the things that we take for granted here become very serious challenges. And these conditions only worsen when it rains. It causes floods and impossible access. And this is what happens. You know, it's not like being stuck outside without an umbrella. It's that people can't get home. And in this situation, the house actually becomes inaccessible. So in order to address this, the city actually proposed a new access road, one that would follow the contours of the hill. And this would require the removal of many homes, and it would actually fracture the already existing urban fabric. So in order to address this, Urban Think Tank proposed a series of informal discussions and symposiums in order to discuss some of these alternatives that could be developed based on this destructive plan. And here you see some of these meetings. And you kind of see this woman in the corner, and she's saying, like, you know, great, they're gonna give us a road, but to do so, they tear down my house. So why do I care if we have a new road? And this is precisely what we're talking about. The road is a conventional way to think about access. But in these areas, we have to shift this thinking because it doesn't really apply. So during these meetings, a new cable car system was proposed, one that would provide access, but simultaneously minimize demolition. It would preserve the community and would also introduce historically absent social infrastructure. Through this active community participation, the government eventually abandoned their plan, and they actually adopted this Metro Cable proposal. And here's where we begin to see the merging of top-down planning and bottom-up initiatives. This should be a movie, which doesn't seem to be playing. Well, I talk anyway. So this is supposed to be a movie that illustrates the cable car and how it moves through the city, but I don't think that it's working. So. No, this is okay. It's not a problem. Maybe. No, it doesn't seem to work. No problem. So anyways, this new mobility system, it preserves the dynamic quality and the social fabric of the neighborhood while simultaneously providing access. It liberates the ground plane while utilizing the often overlooked airspace of the city, and it supports inclusivity through its minimally invasive and flexible response system that is ideally suited to this very steep terrain. How does it? Yeah? Okay. So basically, it reconnects the area with the rest of the city by creating a loop of integrated infrastructure. Basically, in addition to providing the transportation network, it is also a framework through which we can insert ecological, economic, and social viability into the community by incorporating various plug-in programs. The two lower stations act as intermodal hubs. The two lower stations act as intermodal hubs that connect the metro cable into the city's other transportation systems, the underground and the existing bus lines. And here you see one of the stations, Parque Central, and it's connecting into the metro line below. Each station is equipped to accept various plug-in programs, such as replacement housing, educational centers, medical facilities, shops, and sports facilities. And it integrates this necessary mobility infrastructure with necessary social infrastructures. And these plug-in programs are actually embedded into the transportation system, allowing each station to become hubs of intensity that provide social services and other community needs. In this way, the metro cable is able to transcend physical borders, but it's also able to transcend transcend the social and economic borders that separate San Agustin from the city. It doesn't only provide access, but it makes the space a desirable piece of the city. And each station also acts as a catalyst of transformation. They immediately shift the borders from the existing physical edge of the entire neighborhood into central locations within the mountain. Working now from the inside out, the metro cable encourages new upgrades and new spaces. And the components of the metro cable system effectively form a kit of part, or a toolbox. And these flexible pieces form prototypes that can be introduced into other locations. So here, it's not only a transfer of material, but it's also a transfer of knowledge and a framework for design thinking and implementation. This opens up the possibility for massive distribution and the democratization of best practice typologies and design solutions. And the metro cable occupies this territory between the formal and the informal, and its impacts extend beyond its physical limits to address the actual needs of the community. The system, as well as each of the stations, has a strong transformative capacity for the neighborhood. And each is a catalyst for positive future growth. And so with this, I would like to end today. And in my next lecture, I'm going to talk about the Centro de Acção Social per Música and Torah Daveed. And just to give you a little sneak peek of what I'm going to be discussing on Sunday, the Centro de Acção Social per Música is located in Sao Paulo's second largest favela, a neighborhood called Paraisópolis. And this project consists of a terrace landscape, a music school, and a community center that are all conceived as one integrated building. Basically, it's a comprehensive system of social infrastructure and public space, of active and passive building systems, of mobility, and of productivity. It is a prototype, and its introduction into the site provides immediate forms of social and cultural exchange, while simultaneously serving as a catalyst that encourages new types of uses. It's an adaptable framework that encourages flexibility and the critical rethinking of the design process. And the third project I'll discuss is Torah Daveed, which is an abandoned and subsequently invaded 45-story office tower in Caracas, Venezuela, and it's now home to over 3,000 people. And in our trajectory of urban research on informality, Torah Daveed represents a shift from the marginalized fringes of the city into the urban core and into an existing urban structure. Torah Daveed represents the syncretic city and the space that it finds within the existing city. So with that, to leave you with an image of your city, we are using basically in our work, we are using the challenges of the real city as a formative base, and we are trying to unfold these latent territories within the urban fabric. And this is the space that we're looking at, the space between the formal and the informal, where our research and designs propose new alternatives for conflicting forces within urbanization. And it is not a rejection of the city or of informality, but it's the production through syncretism. In the syncretic city, the city is a field of new trajectories that counter unsustainable growth models. So in this way, we can continue to frame these new mindsets. And over the course of the weekend, I look forward to discussing all these different issues: land use, technology, information design, in these terms and other terms. So with that, I'd like to thank you. Thank you.